Rain hammered against the windows of Maya Chen's small house on the edge of town, the kind of steady, relentless downpour that made even short trips outside feel like small acts of bravery. She had just settled onto her couch with a cup of tea and a well-worn paperback when she heard it, a low, pained whimper coming from somewhere near her front porch. Maya set down her book immediately, years of working as a veterinary assistant sharpening her instincts toward any sound of animal distress. She grabbed a flashlight and opened her front door cautiously, the beam cutting through the heavy rain to reveal something that made her breath catch. A large German shepherd lay curled against her porch railing, soaked completely through, one front leg held at an awkward angle, deep scratches visible along its side even in the dim light. The dog's dark eyes lifted toward her, exhausted but alert, as though gauging whether she represented safety or additional danger. "Oh, you poor thing," Maya murmured softly, kneeling slowly despite the rain soaking through her clothes almost instantly. She moved carefully, extending her hand slowly for the dog to sniff before attempting any further contact. "Let's get you inside, okay? I'm not going to hurt you." The dog studied her for a long moment before allowing her closer, a soft whine escaping as she gently examined the injured leg. Nothing appeared broken, though the dog would clearly need proper veterinary attention beyond what Maya could provide on her rain-soaked porch. She managed to coax the massive dog inside, laying towels across her living room floor before carefully drying him off and examining his injuries more thoroughly under proper lighting. The scratches looked several days old already, partially healed but clearly untreated, suggesting the dog had been surviving alone outdoors for some time before finding his way to her doorstep. There was no collar, no tags, nothing to indicate ownership or identity. Maya checked local lost pet listings that evening and found nothing matching his description. She decided she would take him to the veterinary clinic where she worked first thing the following morning, both to properly treat his injuries and to check for a microchip that might reveal his owner. That night, the dog slept curled beside her couch, occasionally lifting his head to watch her with quiet, assessing eyes whenever she moved through the room. Maya found herself talking to him softly as she prepared for bed, the way she often did with anxious animals at the clinic. "You're safe here," she told him gently. "Whatever happened to you, wherever you came from, you're safe now." The following morning, Dr. Patterson at the clinic confirmed no visible microchip, though he noted the dog's excellent physical conditioning and clear training suggested he belonged to someone with resources and expertise in working dogs. "This isn't a stray who's been on the streets his whole life," Dr. Patterson observed, gently examining the healing scratches. "Someone trained this dog extensively. Guard dog training if I had to guess." Maya considered this information carefully as she helped clean and properly bandage the remaining injuries. "So he probably has an owner looking for him somewhere." "Probably," Dr. Patterson agreed. "But without a microchip or collar, there's not much to go on beyond hoping someone reports him missing eventually." Over the following weeks, as the dog's injuries healed completely under Maya's careful daily attention, something unexpected happened. The initially wary, exhausted animal transformed gradually into a devoted, gentle companion who followed Maya's every movement throughout her small house with quiet, watchful loyalty. She named him Titan, partly for his impressive size and partly for the quiet strength he'd shown surviving whatever ordeal had led him to her doorstep. Titan slept beside her bed each night, walked patiently beside her during morning routines, and greeted her at the door each evening with an enthusiasm that had gradually replaced his initial cautious reservation. Maya had never planned on adopting a dog, her small house and demanding work schedule never seeming to align well with proper pet ownership. Yet somehow, within just a few weeks, she couldn't imagine her quiet life without Titan's steady, comforting presence filling the spaces that had felt increasingly empty since her divorce 18 months earlier. She had nearly convinced herself that Titan's original owner, whoever they were, had either abandoned him deliberately or given up searching entirely. She had begun looking into permanent adoption paperwork, hoping to make their unexpected bond officially, legally permanent. Then, on a Tuesday evening exactly 6 weeks after Titan's arrival, a knock sounded at Maya's front door that would change everything. She opened it to find a tall, imposing man standing on her porch, dressed in an expensive dark coat that seemed entirely out of place in her modest neighborhood. His sharp, assessing eyes swept over her briefly before something shifted in his expression, a flicker of intense recognition and relief he seemed to struggle to control. "Titan," the man said, his deep voice carrying unmistakable authority even in that single word. Before Maya could respond, Titan came bounding from the living room at the sound of his name, and for one brief, hopeful moment, the man's controlled expression cracked into something genuinely emotional. But instead of running toward the stranger, Titan stopped abruptly at Maya's side, positioning himself protectively between her and the intimidating man on her porch, a low, warning growl building in his throat. The man's expression shifted from relief to confused disbelief. "Titan," he repeated, more firmly this time, extending his hand slightly. "Come here, boy." Titan didn't move from Maya's side, his growl deepening slightly, ears pressed back in clear warning. Maya stood frozen in her doorway, uncertain what exactly was unfolding on her porch, but understanding with growing certainty that this man's arrival was about to complicate her carefully rebuilt life in ways she couldn't yet fully comprehend.
"May I come in?" the man asked, his voice carefully controlled despite the visible confusion still evident in his expression as he studied Titan's protective stance beside Maya. Maya hesitated, glancing down at Titan, whose growl had softened slightly, but who remained firmly positioned between her and the stranger. "I think you'd better explain who you are first," she said, surprised at herself with the steadiness in her own voice despite her racing heart. "Damien Cross," the man said simply, as though the name alone should provide sufficient explanation. When Maya's expression remained blank, something like reluctant amusement flickered briefly across his sharp features. "I own this dog. Or rather, I did, until 6 weeks ago when he disappeared during a security breach at my property." "Security breach?" Maya repeated, unease building steadily in her chest. "It's a long story," Damien said, glancing pointedly at Titan, who still hadn't moved from his protective position. "One I genuinely prefer to explain inside, rather than standing on your porch in the rain." Maya studied him carefully for a long moment, her professional instincts from years working with anxious, protective animals warring with her natural caution about inviting an unknown, clearly intimidating stranger into her home. Finally, largely because Titan's growling had settled into watchful silence rather than continued aggression, she stepped back and allowed Damien inside. They settled in her living room, Titan positioning himself directly between them on the floor, close enough to Maya that his shoulder pressed against her leg, but watching Damien with careful, assessing attention rather than open hostility now. "Tell me what happened," Maya said, crossing her arms. Damien studied Titan for a long moment before answering, something complicated moving behind his controlled expression. "I run a security consulting business," he said carefully. "The kind of business that occasionally makes enemies. 6 weeks ago, someone breached my property's perimeter security, and in the chaos that followed, Titan disappeared. I assumed the worst, that whoever breached my property had taken him, or worse." Maya noticed the careful, deliberate way he described his profession, the vague language that suggested significant omission. "Security consulting," she repeated skeptically. "Among other things," Damien said, his tone making clear he wasn't prepared to elaborate further at this particular moment. "And you've been looking for him this whole time?" "Every single day," Damien said, and something genuine finally broke through his controlled exterior, raw emotion evident in his voice despite his obvious effort to maintain composure. "Titan isn't simply a guard dog to me. He's been with me for 4 years, since he was a puppy. He's family." Maya felt something soften slightly in her chest at the genuine emotion in his voice, though her wariness about his evasive explanation regarding his profession remained firmly intact. "He showed up here injured," she said. "Scratches, a hurt leg, clearly having survived rough conditions for at least a few days before finding my porch." Damien's jaw tightened visibly. "I need to know exactly what happened to him during those missing weeks, whether the people who breached my property harmed him directly, or whether he simply got lost trying to escape the chaos. The vet I work with said his injuries suggested he'd been alone outdoors for several days before I found him," Maya offered. "Nothing indicating direct human violence. More like he'd been running and gotten hurt in the process." Something relaxed slightly in Damien's expression at this information, though tension remained evident in his posture. "That's some comfort, at least." They sat in silence for a moment, Titan steady breathing the only sound between them as he remained pressed against Maya's leg, clearly unwilling to move closer to supposed original owner despite recognizing him. "He won't come to you," Maya said finally, addressing the obvious tension neither of them had directly acknowledged yet. "No," Damien agreed, something like genuine hurt flickering behind his controlled expression. "He won't. Do you know why?" Damien was quiet for a long moment, studying Titan carefully. I have some theories, he said finally, though his tone suggested he wasn't prepared to share those theories immediately. But regardless of the reason, it's clear he's bonded strongly with you during these past weeks. So what happens now? Maya asked, dreading the answer even as she asked the question. You're just going to take him? Force him to leave with you, even though he's clearly terrified of doing so? I don't want to force anything, Damien said, surprising her with a genuine consideration evident in his response. Titan has never behaved this way before, not with me, not with anyone at my estate. Something changed for him, and I respect that enough not to simply drag him away from whatever safety he's found here. Maya felt a flicker of surprised relief at his response, though uncertainty about what alternative he might propose remained. Then what are you suggesting? Damien considered his words carefully before responding. What if we shared custody? Titan clearly needs time to feel secure enough to return to me fully, if that's even possible now. In the meantime, perhaps regular visits, allowing him to maintain connection with both of us rather than forcing an immediate, potentially traumatic separation from you. Maya turned this proposal over carefully in her mind, several concerns immediately surfacing despite the genuine appeal of avoiding Titan's obvious distress at the prospect of separation from her. I don't know anything about you, Mr. Cross. You've been vague about your actual profession, mentioned enemies and security breaches, without any real explanation, and now you're proposing an ongoing arrangement that would require regular contact between us. That's fair, Damien acknowledged. I understand your hesitation completely, but I promise you, whatever concerns you might have about my world, they don't extend to any danger toward you personally. I simply want what's best for Titan, and clearly, right now, that means maintain his bond with you rather than severing it abruptly. Maya studied him for a long moment, weighing her instinctive caution against the genuine care evident in how carefully he approached this entire situation, prioritizing Titan's well-being over his own obvious desire to simply reclaim his beloved dog immediately. Titan, she said finally, looking down at the dog still pressed against her leg. What do you think? Titan lifted his head, studying Damien carefully for a long moment before releasing a soft, considering huff, his tension easing slightly, though he still didn't move toward his original owner. I suppose it's not exactly a resounding endorsement, Damien said, something like genuine, unexpected warmth entering his voice the first time since arriving, but it's also not outright rejection. Despite her lingering wariness, Maya found herself fighting back an unexpected smile at his observation. Fine, she said finally. We can try this arrangement for Titan's sake. But I want honesty from you, Mr. Cross. If this is going to work, I need to understand exactly what kind of danger, if any, this arrangement might bring into my life. Damien's expression turned serious, though something like genuine gratitude was evident beneath his controlled exterior. I promise you complete honesty, Maya. Starting with this, my full explanation about my actual profession and exactly what happened during that security breach is considerably more complicated than I've indicated so far. Maya felt a chill of apprehension move through her chest at his words, understanding intuitively that agreeing to this arrangement was about to pull her into circumstances far more complicated than she could have anticipated when she'd first opened her door to a stranger's polite knock. Over the following 3 weeks, the arrangement between Maya and Damien settled into an unexpected rhythm. Damien visited every few days, sometimes bringing Titan treats or new toys, always careful to let the dog approach him at his own pace, rather than pushing for the immediate reconciliation he clearly longed for. Maya found herself watching these visits with growing curiosity about the complicated man who had walked into her life so unexpectedly, despite her initial wariness. She couldn't deny that his patience and genuine care toward Titan revealed something considerably softer beneath his intimidating exterior than she had initially assumed. You're good with him, Maya observed one evening, watching as Damien sat patiently on her living room floor while Titan cautiously sniffed a new toy he brought, gradually allowing himself to be scratched behind the ears for the first time since Damien's initial visit. I raised him from 8 weeks old, Damien said quietly, genuine tenderness evident in his voice as Titan finally relaxed enough to rest his head against Damien's knee. He was the run of his litter, the other puppies constantly pushing him away from feeding time. I used to sit with him for hours, making sure he got enough to eat, enough attention. That doesn't sound like someone in the security business, Maya said carefully, watching for his reaction. Something flickered across Damien's expression. A brief internal debate before he seemed to reach a decision. "You're right," he said finally. "It's time I was completely honest with you, as I promised." Maya sat down across from him, bracing herself for whatever explanation was coming. "I don't simply consult on security matters," Damien said carefully. "My family has been involved in organized crime for 3 generations. I inherited leadership of that organization from my father 7 years ago, when I was 26 years old." Maya felt her stomach tighten at his admission, though she found herself less shocked than she might have expected, given the vague explanations and obvious tension surrounding his earlier visit. "Organized crime," she repeated carefully. "As in actual mafia." "Yes," Damien confirmed, watching her reaction carefully. "I understand that this information changes how you feel about our arrangement, about allowing me continued access to Titan through your home." Maya sat with this revelation for a long moment, memories of news stories and vague rumors about organized crime in the city surfacing uncomfortably in her mind. "The security breach," she said slowly. "That wasn't really about security consulting business, was it?" "No," Damien admitted. "A rival organization attempted to breach my estate, hoping to eliminate me and take control of my territory. Titan was caught in the chaos when my security team engaged intruders. He escaped during the confrontation, and by the time we'd secured the property and dealt with the immediate threat, he had vanished entirely." "So he was scared," Maya said quietly, understanding settling into her chest. "Traumatized by violence, and that's why he won't return to your estate, even with you specifically." "That's my theory as well," Damien said, something genuinely pained evident in his expression as he watched Titan continue resting peacefully against his knee, seemingly unaware of the significant conversation happening above him. "Titan has witnessed violence before, unfortunately, given the nature of my world. But something about that particular breach must have affected him more severely than previous incidents." Maya considered this information carefully, weighing her own safety concerns against the genuine vulnerability Damien was displaying, an honesty she hadn't necessarily expected from someone in his dangerous position. "Why are you telling me all this? You could have simply continued the vague explanations, avoided this risk entirely." "Because you deserve honesty," Damien said simply, "and because, despite my initial caution about revealing this information, I find myself trusting you more than I've trusted anyone outside my organization in a very long time." Something warm and unexpected moved through Maya's chest at his admission, though her practical concerns remained firmly present alongside that unexpected warmth. "This is dangerous information for me to have, isn't it? Knowing who you really are, what your world actually involves." "Potentially," Damien acknowledged honestly, "which is why I need to ask something significant of you. This arrangement between us, involving Titan, needs to remain completely private. My enemies would consider any connection to me, however seemingly unrelated to my actual business, a potential vulnerability worth exploiting." Maya absorbed this warning seriously, understanding the genuine weight behind his careful words. "I can keep this private," she said finally, "for Titan's sake, and because I appreciate you being honest with me rather than continuing to hide the truth." Over the following weeks, their arrangement deepened beyond simple, careful visits focused entirely on Titan's well-being. Damien began staying longer during his visits, conversations extending naturally beyond discussions about the dog into more personal territory. Maya learned about his difficult childhood, the pressure of inheriting leadership of a dangerous organization at such a young age, the isolation that came with a position requiring constant vigilance against betrayal and violence. In turn, Maya found herself sharing more of her own story, her difficult divorce 18 months earlier, the quiet, careful life she'd built afterward, deliberately avoiding significant emotional risk or vulnerability with anyone since that painful experience. "You've built walls," Damien observed one evening, watching her carefully as they sat together on her small porch, Titan resting contentedly between them. "So have you," Maya countered, though without genuine defensiveness in her tone. "Fair point," Damien acknowledged, something almost self-deprecating in his slight smile. "Perhaps that's part of why this arrangement feels different than I expected. Neither of us particularly excels at easy vulnerability. Maya found herself genuinely laughing at his observation, appreciating the honest, slightly awkward acknowledgement of the unexpected connection developing between them despite both their inclinations toward emotional caution. Meanwhile, within Damien's organization, his increasingly frequent absences and uncharacteristic distraction had begun attracting notice. His second-in-command, a sharp, calculating man named Victor Kane, found himself increasingly curious about exactly where his boss disappeared several times each week. "Where does he keep going?" Victor asked one of the junior security guards quietly, watching Damien's car pull away from the estate for what was becoming a suspiciously regular occurrence. "Not sure, sir," the guard admitted. "He doesn't take security with him on these particular trips, which is unusual given the current tensions with the Moretti organization." Victor's expression sharpened with genuine concern at this information. Damien traveling without proper security detail, especially during an active territorial conflict, represented exactly the kind of vulnerability their enemies would eagerly exploit if discovered. "Find out where he's going," Victor instructed quietly. Discreetly, "If Damien has developed some kind of vulnerability our enemies could exploit, I need to know about it before they do." The guard nodded and departed to begin his quiet investigation, unaware that his discreet inquiries were about to set in motion events that would soon threaten not just Damien's carefully guarded secret, but Maya's safety as well. 2 days after Victor's quiet instruction to investigate Damien's mysterious absences, the junior guard returned with information that immediately escalated Victor's concern into something considerably more urgent. "He's been visiting a woman," the guard reported quietly. "A veterinary assistant named Maya-chan, multiple times each week, sometimes staying for hours." Victor absorbed this information with careful calculation, his sharp mind already working through potential implications. "Does this connect to Titan's disappearance?" "That's the strange part," the guard said. "Titan is there, at her house, has been since shortly after the security breach." Victor's expression sharpened considerably. This information suggested something far more complicated than simple romantic distraction. If Titan had fled directly to this woman's location, and Damien had subsequently discovered and maintained regular contact with her, the connection warranted serious investigation. "I need everything on this woman," Victor instructed. "Background, routine, any possible connection to our rivals, and absolute discretion. Damien cannot know we're investigating this yet." Meanwhile, unaware of the scrutiny now focused on her, Maya continued her regular visits with Damien and Titan, their relationship deepening steadily despite the underlying tension of Damien's dangerous world occasionally surfacing in their conversations. One evening, as they sat together watching Titan chase a ball across her small backyard, Maya finally asked a question that had been building in her mind for weeks. "You said the security breach traumatized Titan somehow, differently than previous violence he'd witnessed. What exactly happened that night?" Damien's expression grew serious, something troubled evident beneath his careful composure. "I've been reluctant to share the full details," he admitted, "partly because the investigation into that breach revealed something I'm still processing myself." "What do you mean?" Maya asked, genuine concern evident in her voice. Damien was quiet for a long moment before answering. "The security breach wasn't simply an external attack from a rival organization. Someone within my own organization provided access, information that allowed the attackers to bypass our usual defenses entirely." Maya felt a chill move through her at this revelation. "Someone betrayed you?" "Yes," Damien confirmed, his jaw tightening visibly. "We haven't identified who yet, though the investigation continues. Titan was present when the attackers first breached the perimeter, and my working theory is that he recognized the person who let them in, someone he trusted, someone from within our own organization, actively assisting people who intended to kill me. That would explain the trauma," Maya said quietly, understanding settling into her chest. "Not just violence, but betrayal by someone he trusted." "Exactly," Damien said, "which is precisely why I haven't pushed harder to bring him back to the estate. If he's associating that location with betrayal from someone still potentially present there, forcing his return could re-traumatize him significantly." Maya considered this information carefully, genuine sympathy for both Titan and Damien's difficult situation evident in her expression. "Have you made any progress identifying who was responsible?" "Some," Damien admitted carefully. though nothing definitive yet. It's a delicate, dangerous process, investigating potential betrayal within my own organization without alerting the person responsible that we're getting close. Their conversation was interrupted by Maya's phone buzzing with a message from her co-worker at the veterinary clinic. Something about a scheduling conflict for the following day. As Maya stepped inside briefly to respond, Damien remained on the porch with Titan, his expression growing troubled as he watched Maya through the window. He hadn't told her everything. The investigation into the security breach had revealed something else entirely, something he'd been reluctant to share given how new and fragile their developing relationship remained. Evidence suggested the betrayal within his organization connected to a larger conspiracy, one potentially involving external parties who had been patiently gathering information about Damien's vulnerabilities for months, possibly longer, if that conspiracy extended far enough. Damien's growing attachment to Maya represented exactly the kind of vulnerability his enemies would eagerly exploit, should they discover it. He needed to accelerate his investigation, identify the betrayer within his organization before that person, or whoever they were working with, discover the significance of Maya's location and connection to him. The following week, Victor's investigation into Maya reached a troubling conclusion. While she herself appeared to have no connection whatsoever to any rival organization, simply an ordinary veterinary assistant who had unexpectedly found herself caring for Damien's missing dog, the very fact of her connection to Damien now represented significant risk given the current instability within their organization. Victor requested an urgent meeting with Damien, finally revealing the results of his quiet investigation. "You've been visiting a civilian woman," Victor said directly, watching Damien's expression carefully for reaction. "Regularly, without proper security escort, during our most volatile period of conflict with the Moretti organization." Damien's expression hardened immediately, though he didn't bother denying the accusation. "How did you discover this?" "Your absences were noticeable," Victor said simply. "I had a guard investigate discreetly, concerned about exactly the kind of vulnerability the situation represents." "Maya has nothing to do with our business," Damien said firmly. "She's simply someone who found Titan and cared for him properly." "That may be true," Victor acknowledged, "but if our enemies discover this connection, her innocence won't protect her. They'll see exactly what I'm seeing. A woman who matters to you, unprotected, easily accessible, perfect leverage against you." Damien felt the weight of Victor's warning settle heavily in his chest, understanding immediately the genuine validity of his concerns despite his instinctive desire to protect the private, unexpected happiness he'd found with Maya from his organization's dangerous scrutiny. "What do you suggest?" he asked finally. "Increase security around her immediately," Victor said. "Discreet but thorough, and you need to consider carefully whether continuing this relationship, given current circumstances, is wise." Before Damien could respond further, his phone buzzed with an urgent message from the security team monitoring his own estate's investigation into the earlier betrayal. They had finally identified a suspect, one of his own senior lieutenants, a man named Marcus who had served the organization for nearly a decade. "We need to move on this immediately," Damien said, standing abruptly. "Bring Marcus in for questioning, quietly, before he realizes we've identified him." As Victor departed to arrange Marcus's discreet detention, Damien remained alone in his office, processing the rapid escalation of threats now surrounding both his organization and, increasingly, the unexpected relationship he developed with Maya. He needed to warn her, to ensure her safety given the genuine danger Victor had correctly identified. But he also understood that revealing the full extent of this danger risked frightening her away entirely, ending an arrangement that had brought unexpected warmth and genuine connection into both his and Titan's previously isolated lives. That evening, as Damien drove toward Maya's house, uncertain exactly how to balance honesty about the escalating danger with his genuine fear of losing this unexpected happiness, his phone rang with news that made the decision considerably more urgent than he'd anticipated. Marcus, the suspected betrayer, had somehow discovered he was under investigation before the detention team arrived. He had fled the estate entirely, and initial intelligence suggested he might be heading toward exactly the location Damien was currently driving toward. Damien's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he processed the urgent call. Marcus, a trained security professional with intimate knowledge of Damien's operations, potentially heading directly toward Maya's house, aware that a betrayal had been discovered and with nothing left to lose. Get security to her location immediately, Damien said sharply into his phone. Push his car faster through the evening traffic. I'm 15 minutes out. I need someone there in 5. Already moving, Victor's voice responded through the speaker. 2 teams converging now. Damien's mind raced through worst-case scenarios as he drove, understanding with growing dread that Marcus, cornered and desperate, represented exactly the kind of unpredictable danger that made the situation so genuinely terrifying. A man with nothing left to lose, intimate knowledge of Damien's vulnerabilities, and now a clear target in Maya, someone he correctly identified as meaningful enough to Damien to use as devastating leverage at Team Maya's house, unaware of the danger rapidly approaching. She had just finished feeding Titan his evening meal when she heard an unfamiliar car pull into her driveway. She glanced through her front window, expecting perhaps a delivery or a neighbor, and instead saw an unfamiliar man exit a dark sedan, his posture carrying alertness that immediately triggered unease. Titan's reaction was immediate and severe. The dog's ears pressed back flat against his skull, a deep, warning growl building in his throat as he positioned himself directly between Maya and the front door, hackles raised along his spine in clear, unmistakable alarm. "Titan," Maya said softly, her own unease escalating rapidly at the dog's uncharacteristic reaction. A knock sounded at her door, firm and deliberate. Maya approached cautiously, Titan pressed against her leg, his growl intensified with each step closer to the entrance. "Who is it?" she called out, deliberately not opening the door. "Marcus," the voice responded, carrying false, unsettling calm. "I work with Damien. I need to speak with you about an urgent matter." Maya's instincts, sharpened by weeks of understanding the genuine danger surrounding Damien's world, immediately recognized something wrong in the man's tone despite his claimed connection to Damien. "I think you should leave," she said firmly through the closed door. "Damien hasn't mentioned anyone come and see me." "This is time-sensitive," Marcus insisted, his voice carrying an edge of barely controlled urgency now. "Please, open the door. I promise you this concerns your safety." Titan's growl had escalated into something approaching a snarl, his entire body rigid with warning as he stared fixedly at the door. Maya backed away carefully, her phone already in her hand, fingers moving quickly to call Damien directly. The call connected almost immediately. "Maya," Damien's voice came through urgently. "Listen to me carefully. Is someone at your door right now?" "Yes," Maya said, her voice shaking slightly despite her efforts at composure. "A man named Marcus, claiming to work with you." "Do not open that door," Damien said firmly, his own voice carrying barely controlled alarm. "Marcus is dangerous, Maya. He's the one who betrayed our organization, the person responsible for security breach that traumatized Titan. He's discovered we know about his betrayal, and now he's found you." Fear coursed through Maya's chest at this confirmation of exactly the danger she'd instinctively sensed. "What do I do?" "Stay away from the door and windows," Damien instructed urgently. "My security team is almost there, and I'm right behind them. Just a few more minutes." Outside, Marcus's patience was clearly wearing thin. He tried the door handle, finding it locked, before moving toward one of the front windows, peering through the gap in the curtains. Maya retreated quickly toward her kitchen, Titan moving protectively beside her every step, his warning growls now constant, ready to defend at the moment any actual threat materialized. The sound of shattering glass echoed from her living room window moments later, Marcus apparently deciding subtlety was no longer necessary, given his desperate circumstances. "Maya," Damien's voice came urgently through her still-connected phone. "What's happening?" "He's breaking in," Maya said, her voice tight with genuine fear as she backed further into her kitchen, grabbing a heavy cast iron pan from her stovetop with trembling hands. Titan's reaction was immediate and fierce. As Marcus climbed clumsily through the broken window into her living room, the dog launched forward with a speed and ferocity that momentarily stunned even Maya, who had only ever witnessed his gentle, affectionate side during their weeks together. Marcus shouted in alarm as Titan's teeth closed around his forearm, the trained guard dog's instincts overriding months of gentle domestic life the moment genuine danger materialized against a woman he'd come to consider his own to protect. "Get this animal off me," Marcus shouted, struggling against Titan's fierce grip while simultaneously reaching for something in his jacket pocket. Maya, watching from the kitchen doorway, saw the glint of metal as Marcus's hand emerged holding a weapon, panic overriding her fear as she recognized the immediate escalation of danger. "Titan back!" she shouted instinctively, uncertain if the trained dog would respond to her command in the midst of active combat, but desperate to prevent him from being harmed. To her relief, Titan released his grip and retreated slightly at her command, though he remained positioned protectively, teeth bared, between Maya and the injured, increasingly desperate Marcus. At that exact moment, the sound of multiple vehicles screeching to a halt outside indicated Damien's security team had finally arrived. Marcus, recognizing his rapidly deteriorating position, made a desperate decision, lunging not toward the exit, but directly toward Maya, weapon raised, apparently intent on securing leverage before Damien's forces could intervene. Titan moved faster than Maya's eyes could properly track, intercepting Marcus's advance with a fierce, protective lunge that sent the weapon skittering across her kitchen floor as the two collided heavily. The front door burst open seconds later, Damien's security team flooding into the house with weapons drawn, quickly subduing the now weaponless and significantly injured Marcus, Titan's fierce defense having left him with serious injuries to his arm and shoulder. Damien arrived moments later, rushing past the security team directly toward the kitchen, where Maya stood trembling but unharmed. Titan pressed protectively against her legs, blood visible on his muzzle from the confrontation. "Maya," Damien said urgently, pulling her into his arms the moment he confirmed her safety, relief flooding through his entire body at finding her unharmed. "Are you hurt? Did he touch you?" "I'm okay," Maya managed, her voice still shaking as the adrenaline of the confrontation began fading into exhausted relief. "Titan protected me. He was incredible." Damien looked down at his loyal dog, genuine gratitude and pride evident in his expression despite the lingering tension of the recent danger. He knelt down, gently checking Titan for injuries, finding only minor cuts that would require basic treatment. "You saved her," Damien said softly, pressing his forehead briefly against Titan's, an unguarded moment of genuine emotion Maya hadn't witnessed from him before. "Good boy. Good, brave boy." Behind them, security personnel secured Marcus, now fully restrained and receiving basic medical attention for his injuries before being transported for the serious interrogation that awaited him regarding the full extent of his betrayal. Maya sank onto her kitchen floor, exhaustion and lingering fear finally overwhelming her composure now that immediate danger had passed. Damien settled beside her immediately, one arm wrapping protectively around her shoulders while Titan pressed close against her other side, the three of them forming an unexpected, protective unit in the aftermath of genuine crisis. "I'm so sorry," Damien said quietly, genuine anguish evident in his voice. "I never should have let this danger reach you. This is exactly what I feared when Victor first raised concerns about our arrangement." "It's not your fault," Maya said, though her voice remained shaky. "Marcus made his own choices. You couldn't have predicted he'd come here specifically. I should have protected you better regardless," Damien insisted, genuine self-recrimination evident in his tightened jaw. "This is exactly the kind of danger I worried about exposing you to from the very beginning." Maya looked at him carefully, exhaustion mixing with something clearer and more certain despite the frightening evening's events. "Damien, I chose to continue this arrangement, this relationship, fully understanding it came with genuine risk. That hasn't changed tonight." In the days following Marcus's capture, the full extent of his betrayal came to light through careful interrogation. He had been secretly working with a rival organization for nearly 8 months, feeding them information about Damien's security vulnerabilities in exchange for a promise of significant payment once their planned takeover succeeded. The security breach that had traumatized Titan had been Marcus's doing entirely, disabling key defenses at a critical moment to allow the rival organization's attack force entry onto the estate grounds. Titan recognized him that night. Damien explained to Maya several days later, as they sat together on her porch watching the dog nap peacefully in a patch of afternoon sunlight, his injuries from the confrontation with Marcus already healing well. He must have seen Marcus disabling the security systems, understood on some instinctive level that someone he trusted was actively endangering all of us. "That explains everything," Maya said softly, watching Titan's peaceful sleep with renewed understanding of the trauma he'd carried during those difficult weeks before finding his way to her doorstep. No wonder he wouldn't return to the estate. Even for you. He's remarkably intelligent, Damien said, genuine pride evident in his voice as he watched his loyal companion, recognizing betrayal, understanding danger, and somehow finding his way to exactly the person who would care for him properly during his recovery. Marcus had been handed over to law enforcement following his interrogation, Damien's organization providing enough evidence of his various crimes to ensure lengthy legal consequences, without directly implicating their own less legal operations. The rival organization he'd been secretly working with, exposed through his confession, faced their own significant consequences as law enforcement moved against their operations using the information Damien's people had carefully gathered. With Marcus's betrayal fully exposed and the immediate danger resolved, Damien found himself facing a different kind of decision entirely, one considerably more personal than the dangerous conflicts he'd successfully navigated. "I need to ask you something important," he said one evening, several weeks after confrontation with Marcus, as they sat together in Maya's small backyard, Titan contentedly chasing fireflies nearby. "What is it?" Maya asked, settling closer to him on the porch swing they'd taken to sharing during his evening visits. "This arrangement we started, focused entirely on Titan's needs," Damien said carefully, "has become something considerably more significant to me than I initially anticipated. I find myself caring about you deeply, Maya, beyond simply appreciating your care for my dog." Maya felt warmth spread through her chest at his admission, her own feelings having developed similarly over their weeks together despite her initial caution about becoming involved with someone from such a dangerous world. "I feel the same way," she admitted honestly, "though I won't pretend the danger surrounding your world doesn't concern me significantly. I understand that concern completely," Damien said seriously, "which is why I've been considering some significant changes to how I operate. Changes I should have implemented long before Marcus's betrayal forced the issue so dramatically." "What kind of changes?" Maya asked, curious despite her lingering uncertainty about what such changes might practically mean. "I'm restructuring significant portions of my organization toward legitimate business interests," Damien explained. "It's not something that happens overnight, and I won't pretend I can simply abandon every dangerous aspect of my current position immediately. But I've spent years building genuine legitimate business interests alongside my inherited criminal operations, and Marcus's betrayal has convinced me it's time to accelerate that transition significantly." Maya studied him carefully, appreciating the genuine consideration evident in his words despite understanding the complexity of what he was describing. "That sounds like it would take considerable time and effort." "It will," Damien acknowledged, "but I find myself increasingly unwilling to accept the constant danger and isolation my current position requires, especially now that I've discovered what genuine connection and happiness actually feels like with you and with Titan both." Something warm and hopeful bloomed in Maya's chest at his words, though practical concerns remained present alongside the hope. "What would this mean, practically, for us, for this arrangement we built?" Damien reached over, gently taking her hand in his own. "I'm hoping, if you're willing, that we might consider building something more permanent together. Not immediately, not before I've made genuine progress toward the safer, more legitimate life I'm describing, but eventually, a real relationship, a real family, including Titan as our shared companion rather than something we're simply sharing custody over." Maya felt tears prick unexpectedly at her eyes, genuine happiness mixing with the lingering practical uncertainty about exactly what building a life with someone from Damien's complicated world would actually require. "I'd like that," she said finally, her voice carrying genuine warmth despite her uncertainty. "Though I think we should take things gradually, allow this transition you're describing to actually happen before making significant permanent commitments." "That's entirely fair," Damien agreed, genuine relief evident in his expression at her positive response despite her reasonable caution. "I'm not asking for immediate, dramatic changes, simply permission to continue building what we've started, with a genuine intention of creating something lasting between us." Titan, apparently sensing the significant emotional moment unfolding nearby, abandoned his firefly chase and trotted over to press himself against both their legs, tail wagging enthusiastically as though offering his own clear approval of the developing plans. Maya laughed softly, reaching down to scratch behind his ears affectionately. "I think Titan approves." "Titan has excellent judgment," Damien said, genuine warmth and humor evident in his voice for perhaps the first time since Maya had met him weeks earlier. "He chose you over me initially, after all. I should probably trust his instincts." 6 months later, significant changes had indeed taken shape in Damien's life and circumstances. His organization had transitioned substantially toward legitimate business operations. The more dangerous criminal elements gradually reduced and restructured under careful, deliberate planning that prioritized safety and stability over the constant conflict that had previously defined his existence. Maya had moved into Damien's estate permanently 3 months earlier, the security measures now considerably more focused on genuine protection rather than the constant threat of violent conflict that had once characterized daily life there. Titan had fully readjusted to his original home, once he understood clearly that the trauma associated with Marcus's betrayal had been fully addressed and resolved. On a warm evening in early autumn, Maya stood on the expansive terrace of what had become their shared home, watching Titan chase a ball across the manicured lawn below with the same enthusiastic energy he'd shown during those first tentative weeks in her small backyard months earlier. Damien joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind, resting his chin gently against her shoulder as they both watched their beloved dog's playful energy. "Happy?" he asked quietly. "Incredibly," Maya answered honestly, leaning back into his embrace. "Though I still think about how strange this all began. A random rainy night, an injured stranger showing up on my porch, and somehow that led to all of this. Titan always did have excellent instincts about where he belonged," Damien said softly, genuine contentment evident in his voice as he watched his loyal companion continue playing joyfully below them. "He found his way to exactly the right place, and somehow, through him, so did I." Below them, Titan paused his energetic play, looking up toward the terrace where they stood together, tail wagging enthusiastically at the sight of both people he loved most sharing this quiet, contented moment together. Sometimes, Maya reflected, watching her beloved dog and the man she'd come to love deeply despite every reasonable hesitation about his complicated world, the most meaningful connections arrived in the most unexpected ways. A single injured dog on a rainy doorstep had somehow led to an entire family, built not through conventional means, but through genuine loyalty, patience, and the quiet, persistent choice to trust connection over caution. Titan had chosen her that first difficult night, protective and certain despite his original owner's presence. And through that unwavering canine loyalty, both Maya and Damien had found something neither had expected to discover, a genuine, lasting home built together, exactly where they all truly belonged.